was almost as if the entire community came together to trash that Sandy Cheeks movie. Between the negative reviews here, the negative tweets about it at the time, the low ratings from other websites, it was clear that a significant chunk of the viewership did not like this spin-off movie. But this Christmas special is kind of great. We get new lore with the Cheeks family, but there's one thing that we're gonna have to speak about later. So for those who didn't watch the special, we get our first full official television introduction to the Cheeks family. There's been bits and pieces of the family before the special and before the movie, such as Surf and Turf, where we see a 2D version of Sandy's family here, and there's been a book about dads before, but there hasn't been anything like we've seen here. You have Sandy's ma and pa, spelled exactly how it sounds, but also Granny, Randy, Rosie, and Rowdy Cheeks, who all show up to spend Christmas with Sandy. Now, SpongeBob has had a pretty solid history when it comes to specials involving stop motion, such as The Legend of Bikini Bottom, which was their Halloween special for 2017, but also their previous stop motion Christmas special. It's a SpongeBob Christmas, which also was a very solid special and a great addition to such classic holiday specials such as Christmas Who and Scaredy Pants. Speaking of Christmas Who, what I find so fun about this episode is that if you remember Christmas Who, it was Sandy who introduced the concept of Christmas to SpongeBob and thus the Bikini Bottom.
Y'all never heard of Christmas? Is she a friend from Texas?
I'm sure they didn't think about that tidbit of history, especially because they're very shaky with Sandy's history, and probably just wanted to keep developing this totally not lacking in many areas Spongeverse they have here, given the episode's closeness next to the release of the Sandy Cheeks movie. But if there were any duo that embodied Christmas episodes within the show, it would be Sandy and SpongeBob, because there's a duo in this special that's not Sandy and SpongeBob that I do want to center in on later. I want to get out of the way that this looks amazing, the whole special being animated by Screen Novelties, who worked on the previous stop motion specials, as well as a few cool things that you're seeing on the screen right now. It's always great to see the French narrator as he pops in at the start and end of the special as well. There's also small things I enjoy, such as within the middle of this special, you see these low detail versions of the characters bouncing around. That's very fun. In the fashion of post-sequel SpongeBob, there's also a lot of flashy and expressive animation choices here that you'll mostly see around SpongeBob's character.
Oh, Santa Claus! I found the tinsel!
Whether it is the tinsel swirling around him, changing his hats, or this comically large light switch, there's a lot of fun gags within the special that really make this a highlight in this ongoing SpongeBob 25th anniversary campaign that this special is a part of. But what makes this special specifically so good? Sandy is trying to figure out a concoction that will turn a drab, lifeless potted plant into a lush, festive Christmas tree. It isn't until her family comes over and SpongeBob has to go to work that we'll see the solution to this problem, and the problem that'll come from that solution. So I want to preface this by addressing the fans of music but just so happen to only hate country crowd, which I'm sure there's quite a bit of you. There's a lot of country or country-inspired music in this special. Now look, do I have Willie Nelson and Dolly Parton and Johnny Cash and Lil Nas X in my Spotify rap this year? No comment. But as someone who allegedly doesn't have country as their favorite genre of music, I actually didn't mind the music in this episode.
Christmas is a time for giving. Christmas is a time for getting. Christmas is a time for many things. You know we love trapeze clipping, climbing trees, and country living, but nothing beats the gifts that Santa brings.
It's nice to see that her family are all very close to each other and supportive of their own endeavors. Now with this said, some characters are going through the motions, but I think that was to be expected on some level because they wanted to focus on SpongeBob and the Cheeks family. 1 second pause because I'm gonna have to say Cheeks family a lot in this video. Mr. Krabs and Squidward are pretty much how you would expect them to be. It isn't really for me to see the exact same Squidward jokes that I've seen all this time, but I'm sure someone enjoys this being recycled in almost every appearance that we see him.
Can't I just play my clarinet instead?
No can do. I'm using it as a Yule log today.
What's interesting is that this is the same special that would play around with a character who's a wanted criminal.
We had to put a few holes in the family rowboat, but it was worth it to see our little aquatic acorn.
And not at all, because Randy's on the lam again.
That's not common in SpongeBob, especially a character who's largely treated as a close family member. Not only this, but Randy is from Texas, and knowing how incompetent the Bikini Bottom police are, my speculation is that that's not the Bikini Bottom police, especially given how they explored this within the movie. You see Sandy and Randy's dynamic slightly through Randy giving her a sibling-friendly punch before Sandy puts him in a headlock that put insomniacs to sleep for good. Because he should be dead. Point is, there's a few new ideas they play around with here that doesn't have to be going back to the same well that's been dried out for over a decade at this point. And trust me, we'll be getting to another character who we'll need to have a conversation about at some point. But let's get back to that duo I've been teasing about. As Squidward leaves, Sandy takes the bell on his hat, and this is the final ingredient to get her concoction working.
It's finally ready, and just in time. All my friends will be here tonight, and I want to make this Christmas special for them.
Do you see these two menaces in the background? Yeah, they'll be incredibly important soon. So SpongeBob serves as the hype sponge around Sandy's big surprise, and lo and behold, we get a proper Christmas tree with a jellyfish to top it. We'd see Santa, who's taken on many forms within the Spongeverse, which I'm showing on the screen here, and while I've always had a strong, most likely rose-colored glasses spot for the live-action Christmas Who version, the version we'd get in this special is not too bad. He's kind of loopy, and he says something that I'm totally gonna roast him for later, but he's a fun guy. Some would consider him a chill guy who considers Bikini Bottom to be his favorite place to go to deliver Christmas cheer. As he sends his reindeer away, who disappointingly do not become like seahorses or anything festive and nautical, he dives into the ocean. Now, let's speak about Rosie and Rowdy. Despite a clear message to not touch this concoction, they do, and give the tree essentially more steroids to grow so big that Santa crashes into it and is knocked loopy.
Now this will be a Texas-sized tree.
You know it. Huh?
Huh? Oh, Krampus.
Guess who takes the blame for this throughout this whole episode?
How is Santa gonna deliver our presents now?
He's not! Sandy knocked him right out of the sky with her big dumb tree!
Now, do Rosie and Rowdy help with making things right later in this episode? Of course they do. However, they never fess up to being the ones that actually nearly ruined Christmas, and also nearly made things worse when Santa got his bearings back.
You fell on your rum-pum-pum-pum.
We thought you was dead.
But you're fine now.
Listen, I'm all for people having the best time that they can during the holiday season because it can be a rough time for many. But I speak for the Armada when I say these two brats deserve coal next year. I am genuinely terrified of what Gen A is going to deliver to the world. But before we get to exactly how they fix things, let's take a detour to speak about Loopy Santa.
Mrs. Claus, the Easter Bunny is here to see you.
Don't you know what day it is?
Of course! Happy Valentine's Day!
Hold on, Santa. You better not be leaking out the fact that the Easter Bunny has been hopping around Mrs. Claus, and you've been doing nothing about this? Our boy Santa is whipped, and he said it so happily, like this is a repeated occasion. How many years has this been going on for? If the allegations are true, how are you gonna treat the person that, like, almost everyone on Earth loves like garbage? Then he mentions Valentine's Day, so it sounds like Cupid took a peek around. You know how many people would pull up on Santa's behalf? Because let me tell you something, I'm siding with Santa before some Easter Bunny. Regardless, Sandy is destroyed over this notion. The citizens of Bikini Bottom, not knowing any better that two rascals were the actual cause of this, give her a lot of flack for this naturally.
But what's the point of having Christmas
Without any presents!
You totally ruined Christmas.
Now look, I know some people are gonna think that I'm hating and think that I'm just being negative for the sake of being negative, but look, one day, I just wanna have a conversation about Pearl's character. It doesn't have to be today, but just like one day. We gotta look over like every episode, because I swear she does this too much. Getting back to the special, let's talk about how all of it is solved. It takes Granny Cheeks to pull everyone together, and we get some new Sandy lore. I'm sorry, I cannot say that line without laughing. Granny Cheeks?
I remember the great elf strike of 1874. No Santa, no problem. We cheeks banded together and exchanged gifts all on our own.
Everyone within the Cheeks family, makes a strong impression in this episode. You gotta have that one person in the fam that'll pull everyone together. This follows in a similar fashion to Christmas Who, which had Squidward feeling an immense amount of guilt for raining on SpongeBob's parade after he got him a present to not feel left out. He would then give away all of his possessions to the Bikini Bottom citizens under the guise of Santa. Here, the twist is that they're simply delivering the presents that Santa would have delivered if it weren't for these two menaces that get away with it in this episode, which I am docking points for, but regardless, it is a well-animated sequence with a pretty good song showcasing the Cheeks family using all that they have to spread holiday cheer and, more importantly, deliver presents.
Squeaks and honks and clarinet squawks? Stop that noise with Christmas socks!
For a Sandy-centric episode, especially one incorporating these new characters, it's pretty good. I know there's a lot of animosity around the movie, which might be justified, but for a cozy 22 minutes of your time, it does a solid job of spreading Christmas joy, giving you some new lore, displaying an impressive amount of stop-motion goodness, and gives some people their first and only taste of country music they'll be listening to all year. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see one of the most goated characters in this special, Old Man Jenkins, but you can see the entire lore of him broken down in this video right here.